If you want to host breakfast like a pro, these few tricks I'm going to teach you are going to make fluffy eggs and crispy breakfast potatoes way easier, especially when you're hosting family and friends over a long weekend. I'm going to be using the exact same methods back when I cooked for a couple hundred people back in the Coast Guard. For our ingredients, obviously we got eggs. Now, I like to have the eggs come up to room temperature. It helps crack them a little better. I grabbed like the weirdest looking egg too for some reason. I promise the rest of them don't look as strange. Once the eggs come up to room temperature, they just crack a lot easier. The science behind it, I have no idea to be honest, but they just do, it just works, so do it. For my breakfast potatoes, I'm gonna be using red potatoes. You can use whatever potatoes you'd like. They have different starch content and different tastes and flavors, so honestly, whatever you have on hand is perfectly fine. You don't need to peel them. I prefer you not to peel them. They'll taste better with the peel on. I'm gonna be using probably about a quarter onion or so. I'm gonna dice it up. If I had peppers on hand, I'd probably use some bell peppers. I don't though. Could even use some jalapenos. I'm gonna use a lemon. We're gonna go over this tip in a minute, but basically this lemon is going to help preserve these diced potatoes, which is all part of the prepping process. We'll go into that more in detail. Now for the potatoes, for the seasoning, I'm gonna keep it simple. Use some salt, some cracked black pepper, as well as some paprika. You can get crazy, have fun with it. I'm also gonna garnish it with some leftover parsley I've got. For the cooking process, I've already got some water that I'm gonna start heating up now to a boil, some salted water. I've got a small sheet pan and some olive oil, which we're gonna use for our potatoes. For our potatoes, we're gonna cut them up, let's see, these are medium size, we'll call them. We're gonna cut them into quarters and then we're gonna cut them into eighths. And that should be a pretty good sized breakfast potato, I'd say. About yay size or so. If you have any big potatoes like this one, I'm gonna cut it one more time basically and make them relatively the same size. Think bite size, right? You want bite-sized pieces. I used to get called out for this all the time, I'm not gonna lie, I still do, for making really big bite sizes, and that's probably because I'm a bigger guy or something. So the main thing is as long as they're all the same size, they'll all cook, hopefully, relatively the same speed and come out the same way, right? That's the whole purpose of cutting everything the same way. After we cut them up, we're gonna stick them in a container. I got one of these little deli containers. You can use whatever works for you. That's perfect, just fit. So now that we got our cut potatoes in this little container, we're gonna slice up a little bit of lemon. Now, for the amount of potatoes I have, we don't need too much of a lemon. We'll probably use about a quarter of a lemon. And we're just gonna cut it up just a little bit, and we're gonna toss it right in here, and we're gonna fill this up with water. Now we're gonna fill it up all the way so it covers all the potatoes and the lemons. And this is the hack right here. This is the little secret to preserving your potatoes so they're gonna be good for the next day. If you don't do this, they're gonna get really brown, because what this lemon does is it releases its juices throughout the water, hits the potatoes, and it stops them from browning. If you were to put these in water without the lemon, it's not gonna do a good job. It'll keep them hydrated, I guess. But the lemon is really the key component here. And you can leave these potatoes like this, I'd say like max 24 hours. I've left them for a couple days before and used them, but they get kind of soggy on the outside. They basically get waterlogged actually. Think if you're in the water for too long and your hands get really pruny, they kind of get like a variation of that, I would say. Because think of a potato like a sponge, right? It's absorbing all this water. So don't do it longer than 24 hours. So we're simply gonna stick our lid on this. If it doesn't overflow with the lid, it might. I'm gonna empty mine a little bit out. All right, mine are like jam-packed in here. Probably overflow a little. Oh no, it kind of works. We're gonna stick this in the fridge, 24 hours max, otherwise they'll get waterlogged, like your fingers would if you're in water too long. I'm also gonna dice up probably about a quarter of this onion. Since we're only gonna use a quarter, cut a little different. We're gonna cut both little ends off. We're gonna cut it down this way. So when you cut it the way I just did, the onion will look like this. I'm gonna stick these in a little container as well. Now I'm just sticking these in the containers for the sake of this video, right? I'm actually gonna cook them today. I'm gonna show you, but when you're prepping for your potatoes, your prep will look like this. Your potatoes and lemon, water, and your onions. You're gonna stick this in the fridge till the next day. When you wake up, you're gonna have breakfast potatoes ready to start cooking, which I'll show you in a minute. We've got our water to a strong simmer, which is good for this. Now I've emptied out the water and the lemons from these potatoes. We're gonna toss them right in here. This is the key step to crispy potatoes. We wanna par cook them before we throw them in the oven at high heat, because it's gonna make them much crispier on the outside if they're slightly cooked on the inside already. These are only gonna need about 10 to 12 minutes, 15 minutes max if you're using a bigger cut potato. We just want them partially cooked, right? Just enough. And then we're gonna throw them in the oven for another, 15 minutes or so. And they'll be super crispy on the outside and nice and soft on the inside. Hopefully, that is, if I don't screw them up. I used to do this egg prep all the time back when I was cooking the Coast Guard, right? And it saves a ton of time. This particular little tip here, using cling wrap to crack the eggs on, makes a much easier cleanup. This cling wrap is where we're gonna crack our eggs, right? And to crack eggs the best, there's a bunch of ways to do it. I like to do it with the flat surface of the egg on the flat surface itself. You position your thumb on one end and your pointer finger and middle finger on the other like this, and you kind of go to crack it right in the center part. I've seen a lot of people, and I do it myself sometimes too, where they crack it on a container. It's kind of, I don't know, it's personal preference, I guess. Whatever you think works the best for you, do it. We're gonna have a discard pile too. So when you crack your eggs, we're gonna crack it into a little container, and we're gonna crack them all into here, which is the main point of starting to prep your breakfast ahead of time. It just makes everything a little easier for the next day. And you can keep your eggs like this for a couple days or so, but typically when we were in the Coast Guard, cooking for a lot of people, right? One of the cooks the day before, whether it was, during a little break around lunchtime or after lunch or whatever, or it'd be the midnight baker who would be doing it, we'd crack a ton of eggs into a big, I guess it was like a gallon container or so. Crack a bunch of eggs into it. Then it's ready for whoever's got the breakfast shift the next day. They got a bunch of eggs already cracked for them because, as you can see, it's time consuming cracking eggs, right? Even if you're so skilled you can do them with one in each hand. I think I might have used to be able to do that. I don't think I can do it anymore. Maybe I'll try. We'll see. Oh, I think I already failed. Okay, that wasn't a good attempt. So no, I guess I can't do it as well anymore. I failed you, I apologize. But what I'm saying is, it's much easier to have cracked eggs waking up. You're about to make breakfast. All you gotta do is take this container out, scramble them up in the morning, and then pour them into the pan. And there you go, you got scrambled eggs ready to go. It makes it way easier. You don't have to go, spend your time setting up a little workstation, go wash your hands and shit because you're touching eggs and stuff. I want you to live an easier life, so use this tip, it'll help you out. Believe me, I've woken up for the breakfast shift before, and the prep cook the day before did not do this. Oh man, there's hell to pay for that person waking up the next day, I swear. You wanted to get into a street fight with them, I swear. Because past just prepping the eggs, the prep cook would be responsible for prepping whatever veggies we'd be having for the omelet bar, right? We'd set up, whatever it was, six little container Cambro things of, onion, peppers, jalapenos maybe. Maybe we'd cut up some bacon or sausage, stuff like that, or tomatoes too. Tomatoes was a big one. People would come through the line, right? They'd put it in a little dish. They'd give us that dish and say, hey, I want an omelet, or I'd want a scrambled, the stuff in it. We cook it up. Oh, if that breakfast prep cook didn't do it, whoo, I swear, fighting words. Okay, important, especially with eggs, really anything you're putting in the fridge, always label it. I've got these little labels. Honestly, I'm pretty sure they're the same exact really cheap labels we used to use back in the Coast Guard. You can use blue or green painter's tape instead. I use that sometimes too with like a permanent marker. But the main thing, obviously, we're gonna write down eggs on it. Put the date that you're storing the eggs into. We used to have to put like our initials. You see a little spot, INTLS. We'd have to put our initials, so if you fuck something up, basically, you could get accountable for it, right? It's just an accountability tool. For this, It's okay. My wife doesn't need to yell at me if I didn't crack the eggs properly. We're gonna put this on the container so we know. We're gonna stick this in the fridge and we're gonna check on our potatoes. You can keep these eggs like this for a couple days or so in the fridge. You'll be fine. Our potato timer just went off, so it's been just 10 minutes now. And let's see how they're looking. So at first glance, you can kind of tell they're starting to get cooked a little bit. But what we really want to do, we want to do the little fork test. So, all right, that's actually perfect. So the fork is able to go, now I don't got my ruler on me, but it goes in a little bit here, you know, a couple centimeters or so, and that's perfect. That means it's just starting to get cooked enough. It's partially baked or par baked, right? So now it's time to take these out. We're going to drain them. We're going to pop them on the sheet pan. We're going to coat them up in a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper. We're going to toss our onions in here as well. We're going to pop them in the oven for, we'll check them every 10 minutes or so, but probably about 15-20 minutes or so. We want them nice and crispy. We'll make it that much nicer, you know, if they're nice and dry, because we want them to get crispy. That's the whole point of this exercise here. All right, we'll squeeze it a little, let it absorb the water. We're going to put them right onto the sheet pan. Now you could, if you were smarter, you could probably put some foil on the sheet pan. I just ran out yesterday, so I don't have any. But I don't have any mess cooks to deal with. It's going to be me washing the dishes, so not too big of a deal. Now we're going to get our onions too. Now you've got your onions right because we prepped them the day before, remember? Look at that. Look how easy that is. Nice, right? It's the little things. We're going to add a little olive oil, whatever kind of oil you want. If you've been watching my videos, you know I like my olive oil. Now we're going to hit it with some salt, pepper, and paprika. I wish I had smoked paprika. That stuff is delicious. Ran out of that well as well. I don't know if you're like me, but you probably have the same kind of seasonings in your typical repertoire. And when you run out of them, I usually just switch to another kind of flavoring, to be honest. I rarely like restock immediately. I'm usually out of something for, I feel like, months before I restock, unless it's like salt and pepper or olive oil, you know, the important shit, the real important shit, but you know what I mean. So we're going to toss them up like this. If you were smarter than me, you'd use a utensil because these are pretty hot, but it's okay. All right, we're going to hit them with a little bit more of everything. Whoa, whoa. Because we want these really, really tasty. You could add, I mean, quite a few things in here, but one really tasty thing I love putting on potatoes is thyme. I'm not going to use my dry thyme because I need that for my turkey tomorrow. All right, these potatoes are nice and seasoned up. They're going to be really tasty. They're par cooked, remember, so we're going to set them in the oven. I've got it at 450. I'm going to set it in the oven. Like I said, we're going to check them in 10 minutes. We're going to see how they look, but they're probably going to need a good amount of time, probably like 20 minutes or so. We want to get them really, really crispy. Bye, my little potatoes. We'll see you soon. While our potatoes are cooking, we're going to clean up and we're going to chop up our parsley. If you're using parsley, totally optional. I just have it on hand, so I'm going to toss it up in some. You know what would be good in this, actually? If you had some green onions. Actually, if you had some chives. Mix in the potatoes with some chives afterwards. That would be delightful. That'd be tasty. That'd be a good addition. So 10-minute timer just went off, and the potatoes they're definitely on their way. Not there yet, though. Also, we're going to give them a little toss. Because part of them getting crispy, we want to make sure they're cooking on all sides appropriately, right? They're starting to get a tiny bit crispy, very slowly. So we're going to throw them in probably another 10 minutes, honestly. So total cook time might be 20 minutes for these, which is perfect. So we're going to throw them back in the oven. Set the timer for another 10 minutes. I'm going to check them probably halfway through just to make sure they're good, but I'll show you how they look after 10 minutes is up. We've got about 5 minutes left on our potatoes, so we're going to take out our eggs out of the fridge, right? This is the morning, we're hosting. We're going to take our eggs out, we're going to grab our whisk. You can use a fork if you need to. And we're going to beat our eggs. Brownie points if you look somebody in the eye while you do this. Now see right now how they're all kind of snotty looking? That means they're not beat enough. See that? Those big clumps? Now you can see slowly they're getting a little less snotty how I pull them out. We still want to beat it more. So you can see the top, how it's starting to get like a little bit of bubbles, a little foamy. We want it much foamier than this. This is the real secret to nice and fluffy eggs, is a nice beat egg. Now see how foamy they are on top? That's exactly how beaten we want these eggs. It's gonna produce a much more fluffier egg. That's the whole point of this assignment right now. Perfect timing too. Our timer is about to go off for our next 10-minute timer. So our 20 minute timer, kind of. Our potatoes should be done. That's what I'm trying to say, I can't speak. Let's see. Ooh, those are looking pretty good. So this was 20 minutes total in the oven. They're looking really good. They're nice and crispy too, which is exactly what we want. I mean, you can see, ooh, that's hot. That was dumb, Steve, what are you doing? This is exactly what we're looking for right here. Now our pan's a nice low, medium heat. We don't want to cook our eggs on a very high temperature, which is, I think, probably what a lot of people do, and it's going to make a crispier skin on that egg, which we really don't want. I'm going to use a little spray olive oil. You can use butter if you'd like. I'm not going to. So we're going to pour in all of our eggs. All right, hear that sound there? No, you don't hear that sound, and that is because we're on very low heat. You don't want to hear a sizzle with your eggs unless you're doing fried eggs. That's just a different product, you know? We're going to stir them up a little bit. As you stir more, you'll start to see some of the eggs clump up a bit. It just means that's cooking. Well, since I'm cooking so many eggs, I'm going to keep scraping the bottom of the pan so we don't have the eggs stick to it, or there's going to be a nice crusty bottom to it, which is going to be kind of gross. Even though this process might take longer in your mind than just cooking the potatoes the traditional way, like in a pan or just right in the oven without boiling them, you're doing that prep so you can make a much better product the morning. That's the whole point of it, right? You're going to make a stellar breakfast. You're going to make an A+ breakfast instead of a B breakfast because you did this prep ahead of time. So whatever little, you know, special tricks you want to add to the meal the day of, you're going to be able to because you're not spending the time prepping. You're not going to be spending the time cracking eggs, cleaning up the cracked eggs, etc. Because every second in the kitchen counts, you know? You can always be doing something. All the time back when I cooked in the Coast Guard, it's like, hey, if you don't have anything to do when you're in the kitchen, it's because you're not looking for something to do. There's 100% of the time, there's something to do in the kitchen. There's never a moment where you can just be standing there and not have anything to do. All right, I'm talking too much now. So now the eggs are starting to get cooked down, right? Now we want to turn off the heat. So you can see the eggs are cooked now. Don't overcook your eggs. This is perfect. I mean, for instance, like my sister, she likes her eggs overcooked. Many people do, that's fine. But if you're trying to go for the best, the best egg, technically speaking, this is the best. Obviously, it's all relative to your own preference, but this right here is a beautifully cooked egg. We don't want to overcook it, so I'm gonna have to transfer it to a plate real quick here. All right, I've got a couple plates because we're having Brinner tonight in my household. I'm gonna load these bad boys right up. And if you're hosting people too, just leave it on the stovetop or something and tell people to serve themselves. If you want to run out of all the food, that is actually a test, don't do that. You want to serve people. My experience is, if people serve themselves, they're gonna overserve and you're gonna run out of food 9 times out of 10. So make sure you serve your guests. I'm telling you, in the long run, it's gonna totally save your ass. So don't let your greedy guests, your mooching guests, serve themselves because they're gonna screw you every time, I swear. Just kidding, kind of kidding, but it's kind of true. The core concept is true. So now we're gonna load up our breakfast potatoes as well, obviously. I'm really excited for this. If somebody doesn't, you know, I swear, my wife and I do this sometimes. We poll our friends and our family if they're breakfast people or not. Some reason, something about it. There's a lot of people who don't eat breakfast, surprisingly. If you're one of those people, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious if you're a breakfast person or not. If you're not, that's fine, whatever your thing is, but you know, we're just not gonna hang out. No, I'm just kidding. I'll hang out with you even if you don't eat breakfast, I promise. We're gonna hit the potatoes with a little parsley for a little color. The little added garnish really makes things pop. Totally recommend it. That nice crisp to it, that's a good looking potato right there. That's what you want in a potato. And this is what you want in an egg. Nice and fluffy. I hope you learned a thing or two. You know, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps me more than you know, and I really, really love doing this and want to continue to do it. So hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you're feeling real saucy. Leave a comment down below. I'll see you next video otherwise.